custom made and guaranteed.
Hey there, Lego Legends. Welcome back to another episode of How Did You Build That? Now, today's episode is again looking at Season 4 of LEGO Masters Australia, Episode 5 this time, which was the cutaway. It is definitely pretty terrifying that it is probably what Ryan, the Brickman, does best. As anyone who knows a cutaway, it's Ryan McNaught. Obviously, our winners were, once again, Jean and Nick. As soon as they said cuckoo clock, I was like, oh, wicked, they're going to do a mechanism. I actually had previously worked on a clock mechanism while my students were busy working in First Lego League. And I actually used one of these turntables that actually has the massive hole in the middle that allowed me to put more than one axis of movement. And I actually ended up getting seconds, minutes, and hours. Obviously not quite to time, but that was an incredible challenge that I actually went back to 3 or 4 times before I actually got it to a point where I was pretty satisfied with the movement. Now, for the fact that they actually attempted to do this within a LEGO Masters challenge, hats off to you guys. I would not have attempted it, but you did exceptionally well to do so. Anyway, one of the things that I did notice is that they were using a particular gear mechanism that actually I hadn't seen before. And it is actually a differential gear that actually has teeth on either side. One's a 24 tooth and one's a 16 tooth gear. So this particular transmission gear doesn't actually have an axle grip in the middle, and it allows it to spin freely. And there are actually a range of gears that LEGO make that do allow that, so that you can have both a gear that's fixed to an axle and sitting beside it having a gear that's completely floating and disconnected with that axle that allows it to spin and possibly be at a different rate of speed and connect to a different mechanism. They're incredibly useful gears, and there are actually a range of sizes. One will spin freely and one grips the axle. So it's a differential gear, but they've used it in a very, very cool way. Because of the 2 sets of teeth, they've been able to drive an axle through the middle of it to drive the minute hand, whilst also having a beam here attached to a 16 tooth gear. If I take off that gear, that particular hand will just, but with the addition of that gear that now has friction, basically just acts as a bit of a clutch on it. So the majority of the gears that they've actually put in this transmission are actually just to gear it down, just to slow it down. These medium motors run really, really fast. So they've gone from a small 12 tooth gear up to a 36 tooth. So effectively that motor gets to rotate 3 times before this one actually rotates. And then there's an axle going straight through from that 36 into another 12, but then it goes to another 36. So it's been slowed down 3 times again, then again going into another smaller gear before it drives the actual gears that are driving this clock mechanism. Now, I'm going to demonstrate with the power. So really, really fast. It is actually going slower than that, believe it or not. And then this one's going a little bit slower again, and this one's going slower again. And you can see that that's rotating, the axle is rotating exactly the same rate here, and then to here, which is actually the speed that our hour hand is going around. Now what they've actually done here, then off this particularly large gear, they've actually gone back to a 12 tooth gear, so 36 to a 12, but that one goes right through the differential and then attaches to this little Technic piece that's actually got a bar in it, which is acting as the minute hand. It's very, very smart. I love it. Now, just to demonstrate that bit, I'm going to disengage the gearbox and just show you the relationship here. Both the hour hand and the minute hand are basically set at the same position. Minute hand's back at 9 o'clock. Back at 9 o'clock again. And then back at 9 o'clock 3 times for the hour hand to get around. It's a very, very cool idea. Now, one of the things that I saw them playing with was one of these linear actuators. And I could see that the guys were just really working hard at trying to work out how to make this control the cuckoo. Absolutely great idea, but it actually takes a lot of turns to bring that in and out. You then also have the problem, once it gets to the end of its throw, you then have to wind it back the opposite way. And it's a lot of turns, it's a lot of cycles to get it around to be open and closed. So it's about 25 turns in one direction to get it to its full extent and then to bring it back again. Now what the guys could have done was actually just use one of the large gears here and just a little lift arm, and more or less like a steam train piston. Just the arm just goes back and forth and this has a slight tilt, but I'm just guiding my little bird, which is just a nod to theirs. Mine is nowhere near as complex, but it's just going, sliding along these little gutter rail pieces. And that could actually even be geared to the mechanism here as well. So it's a shame the guys didn't quite get enough time to sort of get in there and get that working. They were in the icing on the cake if they'd actually got that cuckoo going through and those doors opening up as well. So Nick and Jean, well done to you. You're on an absolute winning streak. I've just seen you absolutely blitz in the bridge build as well. I cannot believe yours was the only one left standing after all of that. I hope for the sake of the show the titanium brick moves around a little bit more as we go further into the season, but hats off to you for a 5 in a row win. That is phenomenal. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to How Did You Build That? Make sure you subscribe. I'll be getting to as many of these episodes as I possibly can in the future, so stay tuned for some more content.
Come to me, my work is custom made. Custom made, guaranteed by me.